So I wanted to try to find what are the special stories about the art market in Palm Beach and in the Hamptons now.
Sure.
What's going
Sure.
on?
Well, it's a very interesting chapter that I don't think any of us would have expected. And it really came about, obviously, on, of all dates, Friday the 13th of March, when we went into a lockdown in the United States, particularly in New York City.
Yeah.
And immediately, all of us who are used to constant contact via gallery visits, art fairs, biennials, viewings, etc., it all came to an incredible stop. And so we all ended up at home in front of screens and started to get used to this new way of communicating. Well, we got adjusted to that, and then we realized that it was sort of an appropriate time again to reach out to clients. At first, it was just considered tasteless, and then it was considered fruitless. And then I think we all spoke among one another and said, okay, if you send out 10 and one person responds, you're good. And what we found is that people more and more, particularly private collectors, they really wanted the constant contact. They wanted to remain in touch with us the way they had before the lockdown. So it immediately occurred to us, well, if people are leaving the city and they're going to East Hampton, then we should be out there. Once safe distancing and PPE protocols had been put into place, we figured, okay, people are reaching out to us. They constantly want to know what we're doing. We tried with the online viewing rooms, and some worked, some did not work. But we were all ready and adjusted for a little bit of more in-person contact. And so where do you do that? Where the people are. And where were they? They were all going to homes in the Hamptons. Now, that's a generalization.
But how many collectors do you imagine of your collectors are in the Hamptons?
Yes.
How many?
Oh my God. Well, it depends. Are we talking about collectors with a capital C or people who just buy art? It's a very large...
No. Oh, okay, so the one who buy art.
I would say many hundreds.
Ah, really?
Yes. And I think a lot of this came from the fact that, the New York City's art world, which extends into the Hamptons, is based on relationships, and those relationships have a lot to do with word of mouth. And so more people started collecting because more of the people that they knew were collecting, and they found it a hobby of interest. And it was something that they could do collectively and together. And, people were at that point sick and tired of talking about politics. So you'd go to parties or you'd come down to Art Basel Miami Beach, and people would find art as a method of gathering.
But do you have a large space in the Hamptons?
In the Hamptons, we have a beautiful space. It's not considered large, but I wouldn't say it's minute either. In terms of square meters, I would probably say it's about, 20 square meters.
20?
Sorry, 200 square meters. I'm dyslexic.
And it's in what city?
It's in East Hampton.
Okay.
And it was a former art gallery.
Oh,
so
really?
It has a space that, while we refurbished it, it had a proper, beautiful viewing room with natural light and extremely high ceilings, and then a private viewing room in the back and a reception, etc.
And when did you open it?
We opened it late spring, early summer. I think it was in May.
And have you done big business there?
Have we done big business? Well, it depends what you mean by big. We have done an enormous volume of sales.
Enormous volume? Like what?
Yes. I would say we've sold several hundred works of art. Yeah. But we did so, with great caution and great thought. We said, what are people comfortable doing now? What is the kind of scenario that is consistent with East Hampton as a town? You know, we were not going to do masterpiece shows of 7-figure works of art because that's not the kind of impulse purchase that people necessarily make, especially when they're in a stressful environment like COVID. Rather, we wanted to extend our gallery's program, particularly for the living artists who were making work that couldn't be seen in the New York gallery. So there were artists like Torquaze Dyson and Arlene Sheckett, all of whose work in our exhibitions was well under $100,000. And they, you know, just because we were in COVID, it doesn't mean artists weren't making great things. And we just felt we needed to keep this conversation going. They needed to show the work, they needed the income, and people were thirsty to see things. So we wanted a price point that was accessible.
Oh, okay.